Now we talk about going over the net. Now, when someone else's feedback is an attribution of your inner reality, your intentions, okay, it's tough not to feel defensive. We get that. Okay. The first reaction is to rebut. No, that's not true. I deny that. Another tendency might be you might go on a counter-offensive. Okay. You know why I do that? It's because you did something like that. Okay. Now, naturally, this is a normal reflexive response when we feel attacked, we feel misunderstood, or if we're put in a disadvantageous position. But defensiveness can only lead to escalation. And this would prevent both parties from actually learning and resolving the issue. So instead of the issue being resolved, it actually snowballs and boils up to the point that the relationship becomes not only difficult, but perhaps even toxic. Okay. Now, let's accept that we can be defensive. We can feel defensive at times, but let's not act on it. When we hear that feedback, questioning our inner reality, questioning our intentions, well, let's use the feedback model in a different way. So instead of the giver as the receiver, you can communicate a behaviorally specific feedback to the giver. Okay. And you just have to tell them that, okay, what they're saying is actually an intention. And you're probably curious as to what the behavior might have been. What was the objective observation that led them to that conclusion? So help them go through that process. Okay. Now, obviously, it's not going to be easy if emotions are loaded in the conversation. Okay. But it's much better than not doing anything. Worse, it's much better to say or to lead into that conversation rather than just being defensive and throw the other person under the bus. Now, one final key point to consider is that feedback says as much about the giver as the receiver. Okay, so the feedback is not just really information about the giver. Okay, it's also information about the receiver. When someone's feedback is about the other's motives or intentions, the implication is that the problem is all about the other person. However, when the giver of the feedback stays with their reality, and as we've said, on our side of the net, okay, it raises the possibilities that the issue involves both parties. One way to look at this is that uh, feedback, while it might seem to be pointed to the one who should be receiving the feedback, the issue is actually a systematic perspective, right? Everybody has contributed to the issue. And sometimes the contribution might be significant. You might be at fault or accountable for it. But other times, you know that if you've improved or tweaked a little bit of this and that, then maybe the situation could have been averted. It may not be your fault, but you may have contributed something to it. Okay. Now, uh, which leads us to a takeaway lesson about feedback, that feedback starts a conversation, it doesn't end it. So it's not enough that when you give a feedback, that's the end of the story, goodbye, have a nice day. No, it just starts a conversation. In fact, when you give that feedback, and if you're really genuine about the relationship, you want to have that discussion and see how you can actually make progress in your relationship. Remember, feedback is not an end in itself. Feedback is a means to actually help improve the relationship and help improve the other person. And even you yourself, you can actually learn from it. So once you've shared your feelings, then the work only begins. It's just the start. You unravel all the issues and also ask how much of what's going on about you. Now, when you own your part of the disagreement, you recognize that you may have contributed to the issue at hand. It often makes it easier for the other person to own theirs, though that's not always a guarantee, but it's a start. Okay? And together, you can search for a solution that more closely fits with each one's needs, with your needs, with the other party's needs. Now, building relationships where each person feels free to give and ask for feedback is actually key and crucial both in preventing pinches from becoming crunches, from small items to actually becoming big items, and also to help each person develop in new and more effective ways. Both of you can grow. Now, truly, when people care for each other and their intent is to actually help improve each other, then feedback is actually a gift. We shouldn't shy away from these types of gifts. In fact, we can do some sort of a variation of a Hallmark card saying, right? When you care enough to say the very best, right? I mean, that's the Hallmark ad. Well, in feedback, I care enough to say the very worst. Even if the person to whom you are giving feedback is momentarily taken aback. And that's fine. Reactions happen. Okay? But if you're doing it with out of genuine concern for the other and because you see the value in the relationship, then feedback is always a gift for which to be very grateful for.